Food Wars, global battle for farmland and future stability. Did you know? On this planet with more than 200 countries and territories, the number of nations that can truly feed themselves is far smaller than we imagine. This is not a coincidence, nor simply an economic issue. It is a global war that has long since begun, but without gunpowder, smoke a food war. In this war, the weapons are no longer planes and guns, but the seeds we rely on every day, the land beneath our feet that sustains us, and the complex web of international trade. And the ultimate stakes are the future of all of us. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Plenty and the Hidden Battlefield. Some may think this is alarmist. Today's world has advanced technology and grain yields break historical records year after year. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, global cereal stocks are indeed at a fairly high level. If that's the case, why are we still talking about a food war? This is precisely where the war is most covert and most dangerous. The core of the war is no longer whether there is enough food overall, but who holds control over it. Like a faucet, no matter how abundant the water source, once someone tightens the valve, those downstream will dry up. Whoever controls the entire distribution channel from field to table has a country by the throat. Whoever owns the seeds and the farmland holds the power to set prices in the future. For a long time, on this hidden battlefield, 4 extremely low-profile, yet extraordinarily powerful ghosts have lurked. They are called BCdadm, Bunge, Cargill, and Louis Dreyfus. These 4 multinational giants, at their peak, once controlled roughly 70% to 80% of the world's grain trade. Their influence permeates every link of agriculture, from a tiny seed to fertilizers, to procurement, then to transportation, processing, and sales, forming an airtight, closed loop. When your food chain is controlled by others from end to end, the so-called market freedom becomes a fragile illusion. On this point, Argentina knows the pain all too well. Chapter 2. The Broken Wing of the Pampas Eagle, a textbook strangulation. The time goes back to the 1990s. Argentina, this vast land known as the Pampas Eagle, was a world-renowned agricultural and livestock power. However, a reform that seemed like a gift gradually led this eagle step by step into a complex plight. At that time, an American company called Monsanto, later acquired by Bayer, brought their proudly touted genetically modified soybean seeds to Argentina. Their promise to farmers sounded almost irresistible. These seeds not only resisted major agricultural pests and yielded high harvests, but in the early stages of promotion, they were also competitively priced. Argentine farmers quickly tasted the benefits. The golden soybeans brought unprecedented wealth, so they rushed to put more land into this genetically modified soybean. In just a few years, Argentina's agricultural landscape was completely rewritten, with soybean planting area, at one point soaring to occupy more than half of the country's arable land. Meanwhile, once diversified staple crops contracted relatively. This also meant that during certain periods, Argentina had to spend more foreign exchange to supplement domestic supplies of some staples. Just as many were immersed in the soybean frenzy, the situation began to grow complicated. Monsanto began strictly enforcing its patent rights, charging farmers who use its genetically modified technology patent fees. This was standard commercial practice. But for farmers who had become deeply dependent on its seeds, the cost pressure surged. At the same time, some export markets for Argentine soybeans tightened import policies because of regulations such as GMO labeling. Price fluctuations affected foreign exchange earnings, and the entire national economy faced challenges. Argentine farmers found that they not only had to pay higher prices for seeds that had once been cheap, but even local seed companies were plunged into difficulty by this shock. Argentina's experience became one of the most striking and classic cases in the food wars. It painfully told the world, when someone else grips your rice bowl from top to bottom, you have already lost many bargaining chips. Chapter 3. Competing for Africa, a new era of enclosure. As the South American story gradually settled, the attention of global powers and transnational capital turned, almost unanimously, to the planet's last vast area of fertile potential, Africa. Here, a land-grabbing movement that many observers call neo-colonialism is unfolding. Let's look at a country full of paradoxes, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It has about 120 million hectares of potentially arable land, is the potential granary of the African continent, and also holds roughly 40% of Africa's hydropower potential. Yet, the reality is that years of armed conflict, chaotic governance, and backward infrastructure have left this resource-rich country with millions of people going hungry, mired in the quagmire of food insecurity. It is precisely this coexistence of chaos and potential that has opened the door for external powers. Many wealthy countries and multinational corporations are acquiring large swathes of fertile African land through purchases or long-term leases. They plant food crops needed by their own countries there, or grow cash crops for biofuel production. This is no longer a mere commercial investment. Data show that from 2000 to 2019, global cropland expanded, and a substantial portion of this new farmland came from the conversion of forests and grasslands in Africa and South America. Wealthy countries are cleverly outsourcing their own food production pressures to these developing regions. While they secure the stability of their domestic supply chains, they also trigger concerns about local ecosystems and long-term food security. The Earth is becoming one vast global farm. In this global allocation of resources, African farmers are facing a predicament similar to that of the colonial era, gradually losing their land, shifting from owners of the land to laborers on a global agricultural production line. Chapter 4: China's Wake-Up Call. The battle to defend the Rice Bowl. This war without smoke is not far from us. In fact, our own history is full of dramatic struggles over grain. Many may still vividly remember the soybean battle around 2004. At that time, international capital was accused of using its advantages in information and futures markets to unleash a fierce market storm that swept China's soybean crushing industry. First, they were accused of spreading false news about a global soybean shortfall, luring Chinese companies into frantic purchases at peak prices. Then, the market was collectively shorted, causing soybean prices to plummet. In that storm, a large number of domestic crushing enterprises went bankrupt because they could not bear the huge losses, or were ultimately cheaply acquired by foreign capital. The entire industry was severely damaged, and China's soybean pricing power was once displaced. That painful lesson rang like a loud alarm bell and thoroughly awakened China. Food is far more than a commodity on the market. It concerns the lifeline of the nation. The national food security strategy of putting ourselves first, relying on domestic production, ensuring capacity, importing appropriately, and supporting with science and technology has been elevated to an unprecedented height. Thus began a battle to defend the Rice Bowl. This defense is built mainly on two solid lines of defense. The first line of defense is to steadfastly maintain the red line of 1.8 billion mu of arable land. Land is the foundation of grain production, especially amid the rapid tide of urbanization. Holding this red line is holding the bottom line for the food supply of 1.4 billion people. We must not only preserve the quantity, but also improve the quality. By constructing high-standard farmland on a large scale, we strive to turn once rain-dependent harvests into fields that can secure yields under both drought and flood-tolerant fields. The second line of defense is even more central and crucial: to firmly keep seeds, the chip of agriculture, in our own hands. Argentina's lesson shows us that if seed sources are choked off, then no matter how much land you have, it will only be someone else's contract factory. Therefore, China launched a sweeping seed industry revitalization campaign. We invested heavily, developed our own breeding technologies, and overcame challenge after challenge. Today, China's core seed self-sufficiency rate for its two staple crops, rice and wheat, exceeds 95%, effectively achieving independent controllability. From defending territory on the land to mastering the chip of the seed, China is building an impregnable Great Wall of food security in its own way. This global food war may seem far from our daily lives, but in reality, through price fluctuations and the games of international trade, it ultimately connects closely to every one of our dining tables. If you are interested in such great power games and the truth hidden behind the world's operating rules, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell next to it. That way, you won't miss our future in-depth analysis of this complex world. Chapter 5: The Future of War, a Fragmented World. So where will future food wars go? The answer may be even more severe. A huge variable is delivering an unprecedented shock to global agriculture: climate change. Extreme weather, water shortages, and land degradation are making agriculture an industry that depends on the mercy of the skies increasingly unstable. At the same time, geopolitical conflict has become a catalyst for the weaponization of food. The first salvo in the Russia-Ukraine conflict not only shook the European continent, but also instantly threw global supply chains for wheat, corn, and sunflower oil into disarray. Disruptions to exports from Ukraine, the granary of Europe, directly led to a sharp rise in global food prices, and many poor countries in Africa and the Middle East became the hardest hit. We can foresee that the world of the future may be split into two starkly different camps because of this. On one side are countries like China that, at all costs, by guarding red lines and pursuing scientific research, desperately strive for absolute food security. On the other side are those nations that, in the course of history, either because of war or because they were peacefully transformed, abandoned their ability to be self-sufficient in food and have become increasingly dependent on the international market and so-called food aid. The lifeblood of those countries will inevitably come to be controlled by others. This reminds us of the startling paradox described by British scholar Raj Patel in his famous book The Value of Nothing. Note, original Chinese referenced the title as 粮食战争, but the quoted paradox is commonly associated with Raj Patel. We produce enough food to feed every person on the planet, Yet, hundreds of millions still go hungry. Yes, in today's world, half the people suffer from food excess, while the other half are starving. Behind this is not a problem of productive capacity, but a problem of power and control. Grain has never been merely a commodity to be bought and sold at will. It is the foundation for a nation's social stability, a silent bargaining chip in international geopolitical contests, and a quiet yet brutal war that determines the future fate of humanity. In this war, there are no true winners. When food is turned into a weapon and farmland becomes a political chessboard, what ultimately gets harmed is the peace and stability of the entire world. As the old Chinese proverb says, when granaries are full, the world is at peace. Only when every country and every people can firmly hold their own rice bowls can we truly free ourselves from the ancient dilemma of being fed or being starved and jointly move toward a fairer and more sustainable future.